What do you think the correlations are in running a company and being
Oof.
a defensive-minded
But
coach?
as a coach, if you are so rigid to your system, you better be a really good, just as, a basketball coach. We did build a couple of really, really incredible defensive teams. This is going to be, our
Hmm.
best defensive teams. It was because we developed it. And
If you were going to tell them to do one thing on repeat when it comes to defense,
hmm
what is
hmm
that one thing?
I think that any team that wants to have a defensive identity
Hmm.
has to be a team that, but if you can get a culture within your team that values the best teams that I've coached on the defensive end of the floor had.
Welcome back to the Coaching Youth Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Coach Bill Flitter. Today I am joined by Hannah. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bill, for having me.
Yeah,
Excited to
absolutely.
to chat with you.
Yeah, and Hannah Howard is the CEO of Rematch, and they do AI highlight reels, and we're going to dig into that in a little bit. But before Hannah was ruling the world and being a top-notch CEO, she was on the sidelines and on the court. So we'll dig into
hmm
Hannah's basketball background, working at what, 4 or 5 colleges: TCU, Fresno State,
hmm
San Diego, UC San Diego, right?
Yeah, UC San
Yeah.
Diego, Utah
University
State.
of Portland. Yeah, Utah
Yeah,
State, forgot that one as well. So you have a
yeah,
long
yeah.
history of basketball that we definitely want to dig into. But I'm gonna hit you right away with a
Okay,
tough question. I
ready
think.
for it.
Maybe not.
Ready.
Okay. All right. All right. So you built the top defense at TCU.
Mm,
Okay. Now you're building
yeah.
this tool. Okay.
hmm hmm
What do you think the correlations are in running a company and being a defensive-minded coach? Ah,
Hmm.
told
Yeah, yeah, that's a
you.
good question. So, for me, when I was evaluating my basketball teams and,
Yeah.
kind of assessing what kind of defensive identity we were going to have every season, because, you can have your system, you can have your culture within your program,
Yeah.
but as a coach, if you are so rigid to your system, you better be a really good recruiter and be recruiting,
Mm,
just very, very specific, players to insert into that system. And I'll tell you, at least at the college level, that's not generally where your recruiting decisions are being derived from around their defensive skill set. Generally, you're getting, recruits based off of what they, bring more to the offensive end, and
right.
then you kind of
Yeah.
have to adapt based off of what their ability is to contribute on the defensive end. So what I love to be able to do is, every year kind of evaluate, where can we have the greatest impact and where can we have the most success? Is this team going to be a team that, we want to play in defense 90 feet, and we're going to
Mm,
be,
hmm.
pressure and we're going to, fly around and have a bit of chaos? Or, is this a team that, man, we're going to have to sit down in a zone and we're going to have to pack it in at
Mm,
times and, whatever. So when I think about, that correlation between what I'm doing now with Rematch, and, we're launching this established platform that was founded in France and has had tremendous success over there, but now we're trying to insert it into the US sports market, which is very, very different than,
hmm.
the French sports market, especially when we're talking about the youth space. And what I'm loving is identifying, like, eh, where we bring value to the youth market right now, what Rematch is, where we are, who we are, where can we insert ourselves into a small little niche. I don't need to bring Rematch into, the US sports market or the sports tech market and try to be everything for everyone. No, it's going to be simple and it's going to have value and it's going to grow as its strengths and its values are identified and users adopt it. Just as, a basketball coach, we did build a couple of really, really incredible defensive teams. And I can tell you, not one of those teams were ones that we said from the start of the season, like, this is going to be, our
Mm,
best defensive teams. It was because we developed it, and we started the season maybe doing one thing, and then we recognized, like, man, we're actually a really good zone team this year, so let's lean into it, and let's adapt, and let's really cultivate that as an identity. So I just think it's really fun to be fluid in our leadership. I think there's nothing wrong with having, kind of fundamental and foundational elements to our philosophies, whether it's, a basketball system, or it's, business leadership decisions. But we have to be fluid. If you want to be someone who's
good
growing and
point.
trying to, get the most out of your potential, like, you've got to be, willing to be fluid in kind of the current of your roster, or of the market, per se.
So, speaking of defense, let's just take this and run with a little bit. You're talking to youth coaches right now.
Hmm.
If you were going to tell them to do one thing on repeat when it comes to defense,
Hmm.
what is
Hmm.
that one thing? You got one thing.
Yeah, it's communication. I
Okay.
I think that any team that wants to have a defensive identity
Hmm.
has to be a team that others recognize as, well, that's the team that talks. If you can cultivate a buy-in and a culture, specifically defensively, I don't think it doesn't mean that it doesn't cross over to the offensive side of the floor, but if you can get a culture within your team that values the communication, whether it's, and it shouldn't just be chaos, it shouldn't just be noise, right? It's efficient
Yeah.
communication. But the best teams that I've coached on the defensive end of the floor had, not just one vocal leader, not just one player who
Mm.
kind of dictated the vocal presence on the defensive end. It was all five people recognized the impact and the value that, whatever needed to be said or communicated
Yeah.
was. And man, there's nothing more fun to, be able to sit back as a coach when you get to that point and you see your team, like, they're communicating, they're coaching each other up, they're anticipating, the play call or the set or the formation, whatever it is. So I would say communication is, like, the most important key to success from a defensive side of the floor.
Yeah, I've always been a defensive-minded coach, and I did tell you this quick story. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I was about a month ago, I was coaching. I have a fifth grade girls team, and they're
Hmm.
pretty good defensively, and I'm a very conscious coach of I want the kids to play both teams, both sides, right?
Hmm.
Where if we're
Hmm.
dominating on the defensive side, back it down, do everything we
Yeah.
can, but still we're going to play half court defense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had this coach. I see him. He was the assistant coach doing the slides that on the side, and I'm thinking, he's talking to his. Is he talking to? He's talking to his kids, right? And I'm like, I hope he's talking to his kids. Hope he's not telling my
Right.
kids, right? And he starts to look over at me, and he says, "You need to teach your kids how to slide on defense." And my younger self would have said something else than what I
Of
did.
course.
But my more mature now side, you know, said, coach your own team. Like
Yeah.
my younger self, it says, let's look at the score. Like,
Of
we're
course. Of
up
course. Of course.
15
Of
points
course.
right now, and you haven't scored a bucket in this quarter. Pretty good defense. I would. So anyway,
But
um,
also, yeah, how about, don't focus on what I should be doing as a coach?
yeah,
Focus on teaching your players how to attack our defense.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was crazy to me. He was t telling him, and I mean, yeah, he was frustrated. I get it, but he was frustrated that they couldn't do anything on defense. But he's telling my kids how to. Anyway, it was a
Mhm.
crazy story. All right, so we're gonna go back now. We're gonna go back. Your
Okay.
playing days. Let's take us back to
Yeah.
Portland. Is that
Yeah.
right?
University of Portland. Hmm.
University of Portland. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're guard.
Hmm.
Tell us about that experience. How
Yeah.
did you get to that point? where did you play in
Yeah.
high school? What was your
hmm
So yeah, let's
So
start there.
I had as a, you know, as a kid, I played all the sports,
Hmm.
maybe I actually may have been a better soccer player than I was basketball player, but, basketball kind of emerged as, again, our generation, we didn't specialize in sports, right? We were
Yeah,
multi-sport
that's
athletes,
right.
but by, the time I was in high school,
By
I
the way, I
was
love the fact that you think I'm in your generation. But anyway,
well, I mean, we're not of a younger generation that's not multi-sport. I may
I'm
be a little bit
teasing.
behind you, but
Yeah.
I still very much was a multi-sport athlete, and that's a
Yeah,
pastime for sure. Um, but I started to have an opportunity to play some club soccer and some club basketball in high school, and it really kind of emerged to, all right, club basketball and basketball was going to be my number one, and soccer
yeah.
was going
Hmm.
to stay a part of it. But really, at this point, soccer was going to keep me in shape for basketball season, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so I had a really really unique experience where my best friend from elementary school, we were kind of the two stud athletes and, stud basketball players. This was in Southern Oregon, Ashland High School. And
Hmm.
Jackie, she was a 6'1" forward. She was more athletic, more explosive. I would say that I was a bit more skilled and had a bit more basketball IQ, but she was the standout athlete, right? So
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
we're going through our high school career. We're having success, bringing kind of Ashland High, onto the map in the state of Oregon, which at that time, had great girls basketball. And um, anyway, so she was getting recruited and I
Hmm.
was not. And so, of course, I'm super supportive of my best friend, but, I'm like, well,
Look at me,
yeah,
right?
look at me, right? I had 30 last night. She only had 20, whatever. Um, so anyways, she made an early commitment to Loyola Marymount University
Hmm.
in the West Coast Conference our
Yeah.
senior year. I go into our senior year, I'm only getting kind of low non-division one interest. And let me just say this, like I was caught up in the hype that comes around the recruiting process. I
Yeah.
can attest to that. I think way too much attention gets put on the division of where
Hmm.
you're being recruited. And I was someone who believed I was a division one player and I was going to go play division one. I probably would have had a fantastic experience, as a division two player or whatever. And I certainly am proud of coaching at that level and see the tremendous value of it. But anyways, it wasn't until the state tournament, of my senior year, and I had, just a kick-ass tournament, and I kind of balled out. And by chance, we were playing the state tournament in the Child Center at University of Portland's campus. So I'm
Nice.
right in front of, the U of P staff, and I earned myself a scholarship because of an incredible tournament. And
Wow.
so it was my only division one scholarship offer, and of course took it. So really really unique experience because my best friend and I now got to go play in the same conference. So I'm
Okay,
at
fun.
University of Portland, she's at LMU.
Yeah.
And we ended up having two totally different experiences. I got to walk into a program where as a freshman, I got to play a lot of minutes and kind of worked myself right into a program where I was a leader and a captain and, a high level contributor to a middle of the pack WCC program, right?
Yeah.
But uh always knew, Bill, that I wanted to coach. My dad tells the story when I was a little girl watching LA Raiders football games, and Marcus Allen was the running back, and I would
Yeah.
watch games with him with a yellow legal pad, and I would draw plays and say, Dad, why don't they do this? I just
Nice.
have always seen sports differently. I had many
Yeah.
many youth coaches that had meetings with my parents, throughout my childhood, saying like, hey, Hannah's not wrong often in what she's saying, but like we need to remind her that I'm the coach and she's the player. Like, I just I always saw the game differently and was outspoken in,
Yeah.
my analysis or evaluation of the game. Um, so when I was in college, I had a great coaching staff who really saw that, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't maybe the most skilled. Um, but I saw the game in a way that was unique. The game, I've always
Hmm.
kind of felt like the game's always been a little bit slower for me visually. Like
Yeah.
I just see things at a,
It's
at a pace
amazing.
that I think allows me to be able to, you know, assess and react or anticipate.
And
Um,
and what do you think that you learned there
mhm.
that's carried through to your, well, even as a coach and then as a business professional
Oh,
and as
it's
a
this
parent
is
even, like,
yeah,
now your kids are going through the
completely.
cycle, right? So,
So the best thing that happened to me, Bill, was senior year. We felt like we had a really good roster. We had, a
mhm.
strong senior group. We felt like maybe this is the year where we can kind of find ourselves at the top of the conference or compete with those teams. Uh About 4 or 5 games into senior year, get a steal, breakaway layup, no contact, nobody around me, just a simple layup. I plant and my knee blows out. And, just one of those freak
Mm.
ACLs that like you can't explain it. It was meant to be, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, it was, devastating, for me to go through that in the moment and a little bit of time, after it happened. But really quickly, Bill, I had this experience that I'm so thankful for. And to answer your question, it put me at the end of the bench. And it was a place that I had
Mm.
never been before in my sports career. I'd always
Yeah.
been, a leader, a contributor, whatever, right? And so now all of a sudden I'm sitting at the end of the bench in an unfamiliar place and like, how do I feel secure in this role? But also it helped me to realize like how valuable that role is. It's just as important, you're just as integral of a part, and you can
Yeah.
bring so much value to a team in that role just as the captain who plays 40 minutes a game. So I've gotten to the place. I started to, feel it while I was in that moment, but I certainly for years past have always been able to go back to that experience and recognize how valuable it was for me to have that perspective, as I stepped into the coaching world, right? i can
Yeah.
i can relate, I can empathize, I can, help develop and encourage what the value is of every spot on the roster, right? And I wasn't
Yeah.
just blowing smoke, right? I truly was coming from a place of experience. So I think it's really been, something that I, think about even, when I'm playing tennis and, my knees, I've had 3 surgeries now on
Oh, wow.
that knee, and it still flares up on me, but it still always kind of reminds me like, you know what, that knee injury gave me so much, where it would be easy to say what it took away from
Mm.
me,
Yeah, 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 of course. Yeah.
but I gained so much as a result of the experience that was, one that I may not have ever had,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's a valuable lesson, and it's certainly one, that I've been able to use for my kids. My son plays for a pretty competitive FC Dallas soccer team, and it's like you're not the best player on the team, and that's okay. You're
Yeah.
bringing value. You have a role, and just because you don't get the same amount of minutes does not mean that you're less important to coach or to your
Hmm.
team. So yeah, I'm very, very thankful for that experience that I had, even though in the moment, of course, it was, pretty devastating.
Pretty devastating, of course. Yeah. And, through injuries or setbacks like that, losses, that's where the lessons are.
Hmm.
Right. When you're,
Yeah.
just even as a coach, right? But definitely as a player, you don't see it until you're older. As a
Hmm.
coach, right? That's, when you can fine tune, you lose by 30 and you're like, oh, what yeah, happened?
Well, I think
Make those
I think it's
corrections.
also an assessment of a good coach, like when you can take perspective and
Yeah.
value out of, the failures and it becomes
That's right.
feedback, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
when
and
you're a
also
coach
the
who just,
definition of winning. Sorry to cut you off. I didn't
yeah.
mean that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you're a coach that still is caught up on just the result and not getting better as a result,
Right.
like
Yeah.
you've got a long ways to go. But when you get to that place as a coach that you can really find the perspective and the value out of any experience, then you know
Yeah.
that you're on the right track.
What I was going to say is we had a tournament a couple of weeks ago and only had 5 players. It was three, of course, 3 games that day, right? And
Yeah.
we beat we beat we were 5th grade. We beat a 6th grade team. Great
Hmm.
victory. Girls put it all
Yeah.
out. And then we had back-to-back games. So the second game was against a really good 5th grade team, and we only lost by 3. We just ran out of gas. I mean,
Yeah.
we had well, at one point we had played with 4 girls because one was just got a little dazed, right? So I had to pull
Hmm.
her up for a minute, and we only lost by a couple points. And then the next day we played another 6th grade team and sent them to the line too many times, right? And lost again by 2 points. But my speech to them afterwards was that was a victory. It was a victory
Hmm.
in many points because, yep, the scoreboard didn't show that it was a win, but the first game where we gave it our all, we beat that team that was older than us. We only lost by a few points with 5 players, right, on the second
Hmm.
game, and we
Hmm.
came back and we had the lead most of the time. I th those are little wins, right? And
Yeah.
being that close and where you guys came from, right? Those you anyway, the lessons that you have to teach young people, it's not just about the wins and losses, it's about those little victories along the way just to keep them motivated and keep their confidence up, even though
Yeah.
it doesn't show it in the scoreboard. I think it's important.
I I think the concept around celebrating the small wins is not emphasized enough in sports, in just, society, in business. And
Yeah.
I've had to, remind myself in the role that I'm at now with rematch is like, I mean, we're moving a million miles per second, right? And we're doing so many different things. And my responsibility in the role that I have is to make sure that I and my team is feeling the the success by celebrating the little wins, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really easy to just be focused on, the big wins that are out there, and we're going to get them. We're going to collect those wins. But there's so many little things that are building the momentum, and I don't want those to go unnoticed. I want our team to recognize those things that we're doing and how all of those little wins are what is ultimately going to stack us up to the big wins. And for you to point that out to the girls in recognizing, like, hey, there's some really, really powerful and exciting things that we just did here.
Yeah.
And those are going, if we are consistent with those, if we want to, make those things our identity and what we're going to grow on as a team, the big wins are going to take care of themselves, right? So
Yeah,
I love that you're already
absolutely.
reinforcing that with, your 5th grade girls, because that's huge.
Yeah. And and I'll have to say something about Hannah. It's, she when we talk, and this is not our first conversation, you light up, and I noticed this right away. You light up for a meeting you just had. You didn't
Yeah.
close it. It's not a done
Yeah.
deal, but
You're
you
right.
were excited just to be in the conversation, and
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
this um, kid-like enthusiasm that comes out in
Yeah.
your voice, and that's celebrating those little wins
Hmm.
in business, right? Which you
Hmm.
probably picked up and learned as a college or high school and college athlete and
Hmm.
a college
Hmm.
coach.
Hmm.
And this is a great transition into culture, right? Because, what I would teach kids and what victory is kind of is kind of bleeds into the culture. So again, question for you is, I'm a youth coach. I'm listening to this podcast right now. Culture is a big thing. We hear it all the time. Okay.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
have 10 minutes before practice. I'm sitting there. Kids are slowly walking in, getting their shoes, getting ready.
Hmm.
What do you think is the biggest thing I can do in that moment as a
Hmm.
coach
Hmm.
to bolster our culture, create culture?
Yeah. Well, I think, uh, let me first say this. I think culture is a really, really trendy concept. We'll just keep it in the uh, perspective of sports, but I think we could probably expand it to anything.
Right.
But I think what often happens is coaches get caught up in what they think a good culture is based off of what they've observed by another organization, another team, and you try
Yeah.
to copycat it, right? And
Hmm.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong
Absolutely.
with recognizing, oh, those are values that I connect with, so I want to try to instill those values in my team as well. But I just think that culture has to be a true reflection of its leadership to
Hmm.
be tangible, right? To be something that
Yep.
people actually connect to. Like
Absolutely.
your culture and your program, Bill, is going to be unique to how you show up every day as a
Yeah.
coach, right? Your players are going to naturally gravitate to that. So I think what's really important is, for youth coaches, and it's not just youth, it's at any level, like you have to know what is actually important to you. Are you someone who really values, the little things, the habits, how you walk into the gym? Are you someone who really values, the body language that your kids show up to practice with, right? And now you consistently build, you know, habits and culture around how you either address or celebrate or reinforce whatever it is that matters to you. So I think, like, if you're trying to build a culture in a program and today you're going to read a quote by so and so and use that as your motivational north star, and then next week you're going in a totally different direction, like you're still in a place as a coach that's trying to figure out who you are and what you want your culture to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I really would challenge coaches, like, yeah, find what you are attracted to, what feels natural, what motivates or inspires you, but just hone in on whatever that looks like. I mean, I've had, been a part of programs, where, those first 10 minutes looked the exact same for every single practice, right? Before the
Yep.
practice even started, there was a culture within the program that this is how the, first 10 or 15 minutes when you walk into the gym, this is, how your shoes are already on, where you're putting your water bottle, where is your practice, whatever it might be, right? And so I think in order to really establish a strong culture, you have to be clear on what it is that is important to you, and then you are consistently modeling it in your role as the leader, and that's what truly I think cultivates like a real culture that your players attached to.
Yeah, yeah, and I absolutely 100%. It's you, right? You as the leader, you as the coach, right? And
Mhm.
kids will pick up if it's forced, if it's
Yeah,
not you,
yeah, yeah.
right? If you're not being authentic, right, to who
And
you
kids
are.
are going to
Yeah.
be so quick to point out the
Hmm. Yeah.
inauthentic, like, well,
Yeah.
wait, but coach, you said this 3 weeks ago. And you're like, what? How do you remember what I said
I
3 weeks ago? You're not even doing what
know.
I said 5 minutes
Yeah.
ago. But
Can't even
but they'll
remember our
remember and they'll
inbound
call
play
you
that we've
out.
gone through for right a whole season, right? Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Uh, I had recently, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, and it kind of surprised me in the last couple of practices. So, fifth grade girls were learning new stuff all the time.
Mhm.
Their
Of
basketball
course.
IQ is decent for their age, and the way I run practices, we do controlled scrimmages
Uh-huh.
most of the
Sure.
time, and we'll
Yeah.
pick out one thing or two things we're going to focus on and go
Yeah.
through it. You get 5 reps, right? 5 times in a row, fix, right? I'll make small little corrections. But recently in the last couple of practices, there's two girls that I'll correct, and I overanalyze, and I always think because I
Hmm.
want the girls to
Hmm.
have great experiences, and I spend a lot of time on building confidence. I mean,
Hmm.
that's my number one thing. I always say it. I
That's
coach
your culture.
confidence.
Yeah.
I don't coach basketball. I coach confidence.
Yeah. Love
And
that.
this one got me though. I'll correct them, and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? And I'm like, "Oh, don't be sorry." Like it
Hmm.
made me pause and like, "Whoa, wait!" Like right away, I went to, "What did I say?
Hmm.
What did I say, and how did I say that they had to say they're sorry?" Like I'm like, "Don't be sorry." Like you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
not a sorry situation. You know what I mean? I didn't say this
Yeah.
wasn't a sorry. I said you don't have to be sorry. Just
Yeah.
I, how would you handle that situation?
Well, I wonder,
Or what questions
if
would you have for me? Why they said I'm sorry? Right?
well, I mean, my first thought is, are they sorry because they recognize that, oh, coaches had to repeat this coaching now,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
and if they are self-aware for that situation, then that's gold. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I don't want you to say sorry, but I do. Like, if you're recognizing that this is a situation that I've coached this over and over again, and my emotion around coaching it again is because I've
interesting you
already
say
made
that.
this
Yeah,
point, right? But without knowing the context of exactly what you were saying, but
yeah,
I agree. I think especially when you're talking about um female athletes, and I love that you say that you're really more focused about coaching confidence than
yeah,
basketball is you know what I think is such a gift around sports, and I think it's why I've been able to transition professionally from coaching into the business world, is because of my experience and my exposure within sports.
hmm
Losing, failing, being unsuccessful is unavoidable in the sports world, right?
right. Yeah,
And I think that when we're cultivating, a culture that is about confidence, that confidence has to survive failing over and over and over again, right?
yeah,
And so, my reaction if the kid's telling me sorry is like, I want to make sure that you're not saying sorry because you think I'm disappointed in your
yeah. It's exactly.
failure or
That's right. Yeah,
doing
right.
something wrong. Like,
Yeah,
my coaching is, and my role in developing you is to help you understand whatever the nuances are that's going to make us or lead us to the highest probability of success. It still may be something we can't control,
yeah,
but I don't want to be apologized because you did it wrong.
yeah,
Like, I want you to understand why it was done wrong, or why the result was what it was, and what am I saying, or what am I trying to give you as tools to set you up for success, right? um and that's what I just think is so important about the role that coaches have in youth
yeah.
development, is truly we're setting the foundational identity for these young people in how they handle
That's
what
right.
life is going to bring. A lot of tough stuff and a lot of losses. And do we have the resilience and the ability to have perspective and awareness around, okay, well, what led to that result, right? And
Mm,
what can I
mm,
get
hmm
out of that experience, and I'll be better because of it, you know?
Yeah, 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 for sure. No, that's absolutely right. Uh, when you're thinking about, well, I think it's a good segue into. Okay, right now you're holding the magic wand. And there's so many discussions about what's wrong, what's right with youth sports. It's obviously
Hmm.
getting a lot of attention. And since you come from the
Hmm.
basketball world and we're talking to basketball
Hmm.
coaches,
Hmm.
wave your magic wand across what's going on in youth basketball and you can change three things. What were those
Ooh,
three things you would change or improve or
yeah,
and I'll give you one you can keep.
yeah,
So
yeah,
three
yeah,
changes, one keep.
yeah.
Three
Well,
enhancements. Maybe not just changes, but let's like yeah, like maybe could be better.
I think um the first thing that jumps to mind for me is the amount of play versus development.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
I was, coaching college basketball and we would be, on the recruiting trail, and let's just talk about the month of July during the evaluation period. These kids are playing, 60 games
Yeah.
in, a couple of weeks, right?
Yep.
And I think what what that I don't think that model is healthy for a lot of reasons: physical
Mm.
health, mental health,
Mm.
financial health, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what I think that kind of leads into, and I don't know if I'm going to hit as like three prongs, but I think
Yeah.
what it leads me to, where I think we need to do a better job in youth sports, is the development, not only around just the skill development that comes through practice, but the development of self-evaluation after competition. When
Mm.
we play so many games, we don't give ourselves the space to be able to actually reflect and self-evaluate. I think coaches get caught up in that. I think players get caught up in that. I think parents get caught up in it. And there's probably other stakeholders in youth sports that get caught up in it. And again, I'm someone who's a big believer, in a growth mindset, and that
Hmm.
we're on this constant journey of, rediscovering a better version of ourselves, and that comes through, experiences and evaluating those experiences. And you know what I think is so valuable, if we can do it in youth sports, is can we teach these kids, and can we model it as leaders, to self-reflect, and let's actually think about, what happened during the course of that game, or maybe let's not even talk about the game. Let's talk about, how did we come into that game? How did we show up into the gym?
Mm.
Were we late to arrive? Did we have
Yeah.
half our team coming in with the wrong jersey? Like, I think allowing us more time and space in youth sports to actually self-evaluate and evaluate the process is gonna just make us so much more present in in the moment. And we
Yeah.
all know that it's so easy to get distracted and caught up, in things that aren't within our control, right?
Yeah.
And I think that becomes that cycle of, not achieving the best version of ourselves, or not putting our best, product on the floor. So there's just something around the the I don't know, I won't say the schedule, because that doesn't quite feel like the right word, but I just think we've got to create more time and space for self-reflection. And I'll tell you, one of the things, if not maybe the biggest things that prevent us from doing that, Bill, is these things,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah. For
we
sure.
all finish, whatever it is, and then we, pick up our phone and we get lost into social media, right? Or
Yeah.
something, right? I mean, we instituted a rule, when I was coaching at college, where our players would have to turn their phones in. This may not be applicable to your fifth grade girls, but maybe for some of, high school coaches listening, they turn their phones in, when they get to the arena 90 minutes before, and they wouldn't get their phones back until we were on the bus and we, were
Hmm.
leaving, or we had finished our, home game, whatever. But the whole premise around it was, can we just hone in and just be focused? Can we
Yeah.
eliminate
Be
distractions?
where your feet are at, right?
Exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And we got a lot of feedback from girls. It's hard often for freshmen when they'd be like, "Wait, what? My mom wants me to text her after the game, or well,
Right.
my music, whatever it might be." But what we did see is that kids started to do a much better job in their reflection,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and being present and being where their feet are. And I think that that's something that is an impossible task, but if we as leaders and coaches, can do what we can do in this space to try to model and teach the youth the value of that, I think we're doing, a massive service to them that will benefit them, far beyond the
Yeah.
court.
You're going to be a human longer than you're going to be a player, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've known some coaches that they hand out journals to their high
Hmm.
school players, and so
Hmm.
before and after a game, or
Hmm.
yeah, before the game, they can journal. After the game, they give it
Hmm.
to him for that self-reflection, and the
Hmm.
coach just collects them, holds on to them, right, and then gives it back to him. So
Yeah.
they can process a little bit of that information
Yeah.
that just happened. So
Yeah.
they they swear by it, right? That it's helped
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think again, that's a perfect example, Bill, of if that's something that a coach consistently values, right? They're
Yeah,
establishing that
that's
into the
right.
culture of their program, right? If you're a
Yeah.
coach that, hey, well, let me give you a journal, you write something, you give it to me. I don't really do much with it. I don't give you feedback. I don't internalize, like,
Yeah.
but I think it's a powerful tool, again, if it's something that you're consistent and you model.
Well, and you mentioned we should be spending more time in development than we are games, which
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
So help me and help our coaches who are listening. You have 60 minutes,
Hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
Break that up for me. What does a 60-minute
Yeah.
practice look like?
Yeah, I normally like to try to start practice with a competitive drill just to really
Hmm.
like force them into the fire and let's get present with some sort of competitive drill, whether it's a competitive shooting drill or, if we're at the right stage in the season, maybe we're even throwing in, some competitive, 3-on-3 breakdown concepts that we'd gone over earlier in the week or
Hmm.
something, right?
Yeah.
But something
Yeah.
just right out of the gate that like almost kind of shocks their system into like being where your feet are and being present and like we're
Yeah.
here for a reason. But then what we would normally do is kind of do something that activates that competitive flow and intensity, and then we would go into probably of a 60-minute practice plan. I would say we'd probably prioritize a good 25 minutes of skill development. Um, and and I think it's so easy when you're crunched for time to think like, well, man, if I can only get 10 minutes of ball handling, are they really going to get anything out of that? I know I'll get way more out of our defensive rotation if I throw them into 5-on-5 and we start working on our ball screen defense, right? It's easy to
Right,
get
right,
caught up
right.
in that. But
Yeah.
when you think about the compound effect of like, hey, 10 minutes today and 10 minutes tomorrow and 10,
Hmm.
um, it's, I think it's really easy for coaches to push aside just the fundamental, individual skill development. But it is so important. It's so important. And I think that that's where if you can construct your skill development, your breakdown fundamental work in a way that's still reinforcing kind of bigger concepts, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
whether
right. Yeah.
that's rotational stuff, whether that's I don't know, we know that we're going to be facing a 2-3 zone and we're going to have to get really good at our passing to the high post, like, and now we're doing a passing skill development thing that we can structure in a way that lends itself to what we're going to be focusing on in the bigger picture. I think that's really really good practice planning when you can create individual skill work that is very much applicable and create the connect the dots to what you have maybe coming in later in practice. um but then similar to what you alluded to earlier with kind of your philosophy around scrimmaging. I think what we had the benefit of when I was coaching is I was the defensive coordinator for our head coach Reagan, who we worked together for 12 years.
Hmm.
So we had the ability where we could do offense and defensive work at the same time because she would focus on the offense, right? And I could
Right.
focus on
Yeah.
the defense, right? And I'm a big, big believer. I don't believe in controlled scrimmage in the sense that it's, you know, just up and down the floor. But I love what you described. It's like, okay, purple, you've got, the next 10 possessions, you're on offense, and white, you're, the next 10 possessions, you're on defense. And, we're going to stop it maybe, each possession and coach some things up. But sometimes it's just going to be like, all right, next possession, let's go, right? So
Yeah.
I love being able to create a practice plan, if you have the ability as a coach to where you can be simultaneously working on both the offensive and the defensive strategy or game plan. And then I think a real key component for good coaches is find adversity and then lean into it. Like when
Hmm.
there's adversity happening in practice, whether it's they're struggling with a drill, forget the rest of the practice plan. them having adversity in whatever drill, lean into that. Like, even if that becomes the drill that you do the rest of practice, right?
Hmm.
I think so often as coaches, we get caught up in the practice plan
That's right. Yeah.
and we just feel like we need to get to everything because everything's important. Of course it is. But
Yeah.
I think when you can see and identify within a practice where, wait, there's a point of friction, there's a challenge here, we're coming up against some adversity, like I found that when I kind of made that shift as a coach, where it was like, no, anytime there's a glimpse of adversity, I'm leaning in, even if we might have to kind of cultivate it, right? Like where you
Yeah.
can see a certain player is, on edge, like, oh, well, let me call a foul against her when, maybe it wasn't a foul, maybe it was, whatever. But like, okay, let me see how if I kind of poke the bear, what are we going to get out of this? And often, when you can kind of cultivate that
Yeah.
environment,
I'm
that's where
laughing
you see
because
your
I've done
team
that
grow.
multiple
I'm
times
sure,
with a
I'm sure you
particular,
have.
like, yeah, I'm gonna call her. That's not a foul, coach. I'm like, now you're gonna get a T talking to me that
Hmm.
way, right? But
Exactly.
if you turn
Exactly.
that into a lesson, right? It's
Hmm.
like, hey, you got to keep your cool, right?
Hmm.
And here's
Hmm.
why, right? And I,
Or you're going to see your teammates respond, right?
they were
When
gonna
they
say, yeah,
see,
that's right. That's
they
right.
see
Yeah.
a teammate who's losing her composure,
Yeah.
what are you going to be able to say to those teammates who did or didn't step in and support her, right? Like,
Hmm.
I just think there's so much value that we can grab as coaches when we see our teams and our players in that, space of you know friction, adversity,
Yeah,
a
I
bit of that
agree.
boiling point.
One of my big things that I'm teaching this year is teaching the kids how to hold their teammates accountable.
Mm. So
And
big.
yeah, and it's harder than it sounds because there's, the especially what I've seen, and maybe it's just the girls that I have, they're nice, right? And
Hmm.
they don't want to rock the boat, or they don't want to
Hmm.
lean
Hmm.
into someone, or and I'm like, and we have these conversations, and I said, well, you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to
Right.
just, hey, just so you know, I was wide open. This is what I'm doing. Look, just keep
Yeah.
your head up. Maybe you can see me next time.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
have to like just tap them on the shoulder as you're running in transition, or at a or at a timeout, or wherever it is. But just holding each
Hmm.
other accountable, and then learning how to speak to one another.
Hmm.
And what we also talk about, sometimes it's, as in a timeout, you got 30 seconds, right? Or unless you have a full timeout, and things got to come out quick, right? And there's no
Hmm.
niceties, sometimes as a
Hmm.
coach, it's just the information,
Yeah.
right? And some kids will take that as, oh, coach is mad, right?
Hmm.
Oh, he's
Hmm.
mad now, right?
Hmm.
So we have those conversations too. It's like, no, not mad. Just we got a short amount of time, right?
Yeah.
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 So we teach that we teach
Yeah.
that in between drills and things, or I'll blow the whistle and the walking over. I'm like, you don't walk over when I blow the whistle. It's just like a timeout, right? So we relate it
Hmm.
back to the game. I only have 30 seconds, and now you just wasted 10
Yep.
seconds of that walking across the gym.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think those elements, I mean, that's what I think is a successful practice environment, is where you are constantly reinforcing, the habits that we're building daily in practice are the
Hmm.
habits that we will is the training that we're going to sync to in competition, right? Like the
Yeah,
idea of
right.
like rising, to the moment, like, no, it should be about syncing to your training, right? And that's where you show up and compete in competition, is how you've done things in practice. And so the more
Yeah.
that, you can, yeah, reinforce that a whistle in practice is like, a horn in a game, you hustle, you take
Yeah.
advantage of that time. I mean, anytime that we as coaches can, I think, create that correlation, we're just setting up our kids for more success.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Okay, a couple more questions though. And so the big, every kid, every parent, lots of parents want to get their kids into college, right? And
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
to play basketball. And you have your kids now, you probably have a different
Hmm.
perspective, having gone through that, having,
Hmm.
been a coach at a high level. What advice do you have for parents who have that goal for their kids, or it's
Hmm.
there, it's looming, right?
Hmm.
What,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
what's that advice you have now?
Well, I think one of the things that, I've certainly as my kids, especially my son, who's now playing at kind of a high level soccer, club soccer
And
organization, and
he's in high school,
he's 14, he's eighth grader.
eighth grader. Okay.
Um,
Uh-huh.
so I'm paying a lot of money for him to be a part of this, organization, and I'm
Yeah.
fully supportive in that pathway and doing this for him. But I think what often happens for parents when they start to get into this age that maybe my son is just starting, to be, in, is managing expectations, right? Like just because you're paying to play on, a high level club team, or you're playing, in tournaments, whatever it is, right? Like
Yeah.
what is it? I don't think there's anything wrong with us for having an expectation around a return on our investment, right? I think the ROI in the money that we spend as parents to support our kids is justified. But I think what happens is we're not spending enough time in really understanding, like, well, what is the return that I'm looking to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
Am I looking for the college scholarship? And maybe that's okay. Like if that's truly what it is, then know that and identify it, and now have the conversations and have the strategy that helps support that return, right? But I think what happens so often is I think parents are not really clear on what their true return is on their investment. And I think then the hype and the noise that comes around, like, people who are outside of it, let's say, like, oh, well, gosh, Bill, you're spending, $15,000 a year for your kid to play on this, club basketball team. Like, well, surely they're going to get a scholarship.
Hmm.
And then you're like, well, yeah, you're right. I should be getting a scholarship for my kid, right?
I just
And
paid for one, right?
yeah,
The equivalent of
exactly.
one.
I
Yeah.
could have just, yeah, I could have just
Yeah.
saved that. And, but I think where parents get caught up in this whole process is the noise around the experience, the noise around the journey. And, you know, what I think is so important for parents in the start of the recruiting process is you better know that it takes your own investment of time and assessment of who your kid is, where they're really supposed to probably land,
Hmm.
and then also investing in the relationships. Like there is a place, I mean, I'm not going to say for everyone, because of course you have to have a high level of skill and all the tangible things that go into playing at the next level. But like I said, because I was guilty of it, I was caught up in the Division 1 or nothing, right? Nothing else was
Right.
good enough for me. And my
Yeah.
parents didn't know, they didn't have any perspective. That was just the mindset that I had. But there's so many places and so many opportunities and so many great experiences that can be had at the college level, but you have to invest in it. I tell kids all the time, go watch college basketball. Go watch college sports. Contact college coaches and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can I come watch a practice? Like, if you're not
Mm.
invested in
Hmm.
learning and knowing about the culture and the program and all the things, like, then I don't know. I don't think you're really serious about the experience. And there's so much accessibility now, but you have to be invested in the journey. If you're not someone who's watching college basketball, but you say you want to play college basketball, like there's something that doesn't connect there. And I think that
Yeah.
that goes to parents too. Like you should see the game, you should know the game, you should know, the landscape of college basketball as you're wanting, to fulfill this dream or see your kid's dream be fulfilled by playing at that level. And I think that's an element where parents, I get it. We're busy, we are busy, we have a lot going on, but if it's really something that you're serious about and you believe that your kid has the potential to do it, you got to invest in the sport and in the relationships that are going to help, facilitate that opportunity down the road.
You know, it's fascinating when you say that and just let um either through the questions they ask me, the things that they say, the the moves they're trying to do on the court.
Mhm.
There's probably on a team on a well, on a team, my team of 10 right now, maybe two of the girls that watch
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah.
And guess
Sure.
what? They're the top girls
Hmm.
on the team.
Yep.
It's,
Yep. Yeah.
so yeah, watching I think is truly important because you can see, even if you may not understand what they're doing all the time, right? But you
Yeah.
can see movement and you know what a
Well,
screen looks like,
and it's
and
also like, I mean,
just
I say this to
conversations.
my daughter's group of girls. I've had the chance since I got out of coaching. I got a chance for a couple of seasons to coach, a few different sports, not just
Hmm.
basketball.
Yeah.
But like one of my favorite things to say, I don't know if it's favorite, it's just one of my knee-jerk things to say is where it's like, be an athlete. Show me what you think being an athlete should look like in this
Mm.
moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a real telling assessment when if a kid says, "Okay, coach," and then it's like we're like, "Oh no, that's not really being athletic," right? So I think being at games and being exposed to sports, like it just you're absorbing it through osmosis of just like this is athleticism. This is what explosive looks like. Even if I don't know
Mm.
how to define that action as an
That's a good point.
explosive
Yeah.
move, I just saw it, right? And that's going to translate. And I think that, those two girls that you have on your team, they may have a true higher basketball IQ. They may actually understand the game, more than their peers, but they also just probably understand what their athleticism is on a much deeper level than probably their peers. They
Yeah.
probably know what their body and what their mind and their body are trying to do in conjunction with each other when they're out on the court. And I think that happens as a result of being exposed to sports.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I think as coaches, a lot of times we overcomplicate things. And I can't tell you how many, my I just, again, I'm not saying that I'm perfect because I'm definitely not, but my speeches, it's like first day of practice is my favorite Vince Lombardi, this is a football. I'm like, this is a
Mm-hmm.
basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always
Yeah.
say little ball, big hoop. That's where it goes. You know how to play. Just get it there, right? And we want it, and then we want to do that and as efficiently as possible. What is the efficient? What does it being efficient mean, right? Less
Mm-hmm.
dribbles, right? Working together, passing, right? And movement, creating space, right? So I just kind of just like, and it's just like doesn't the plays that we run or the things that we do, it's only to signal so what your other four teammates should be doing on the court and where they're going to be to create the space that we need, right?
Yep.
So
We used to say all the time, Bill, like
yeah.
the coaching, the game plan, the offense, the defense, whatever, like that's the
Hmm.
blueprint. Like that's our job as coaches to, present the blueprint. But it's y'all's job to go decorate the house. You're the ones that
Yeah.
make it a home, and that's where
It's a
your
good point.
athleticism
Yeah.
and your instincts and your teamwork, right? That's what
Yeah.
all contributes to the actual home.
Yeah. Let's change subjects here real quick. Let's talk about rematch a little bit. Because I think it's really relevant for our audience. And what's the problem rematch is trying to solve for
Yeah.
coaches and players?
Yeah. So I think at its core, Rematch is a free platform, or we've got a premium app at $4.99, so still very, very affordable. But it's a platform that is for capturing sports highlights, and truly at its core is just simply to be seen and celebrated, right? There's a lot of things that Rematch is going to do to serve its users in those moments, but what's the motivation of capturing those moments? Is it simply just to cherish the memories and to document our kids' sports journey, through their career,
Yeah.
to, coaches being able to, who don't maybe have access to, a full game footage, but if they've got parents on the sideline who are using the Rematch app and capturing content, now a coach is going to be able to go in and not only see, what I captured, but they'll see what you captured, Bill, and maybe they even see what, an opponent's parent may have captured. So it's a public platform that is, not biased or discriminatory against the level of play. It is every athlete,
Mm.
every game, every sport now has a platform to be seen and celebrated in their efforts on the floor. So, it's really, really fun to bring it and to really take a go-to-market strategy for the youth space, because for me, my vision is that, when a parent and when a family discovers Rematch, it becomes a part of their weekend routine, right? It's part of
Hmm.
their sports behavior where you are capturing those moments. Again, whatever that motivation is. Maybe it's because your kid is an absolute stud and you're trying to build their social media brand because NIL is motivating you, or
Hmm.
it's simply, for me in my experience, my parents live on the West Coast. They don't get to see their grandbabies, play sports, but within 2 minutes of the end of my son's soccer game or my daughter's volleyball game, I can text message a fully cultivated highlight reel that, through AI technology is already doing the edits for you. Simply all I had to do was capture the moments. And now my parents are, enjoying a 4-minute highlight video
Yeah.
of their grandkids, right?
Yeah.
So, it's truly it's a platform about, creating visibility, equal opportunity for visibility around sports, and creating an opportunity to be celebrated in that space.
Is it, do you often think about like you go back to your Portland playing days and think, oh, someday I'm going to be the CEO, right? And you look at your
Right.
journey from,
Yeah.
it was all basketball, right? It was
Hmm.
sports and basketball, and
Hmm.
now you're the CEO of a tech company. That's pretty cool. That's a great
Yeah.
journey and a great inspiration for, I think, athletes out there that,
Yeah.
as I said before, you're a human being longer than you are an athlete, and
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. One of the things that I am so appreciative of, from one of my mentors, he didn't even realize that this was such an impactful thing for him to say to me, maybe, I don't know, let's say it was around 2017. I
yeah.
was coaching at TCU, but he made the point of like, God, I look at what you're doing, Hannah, coaching at the college level, and he's a businessman, and he says like, I can't imagine that actually what a lot of what you're doing actually has to do with like the X's and O's of coaching the sport of basketball. Like I look at what you do professionally
Mm-hmm.
and you are running a business.
Mm-hmm.
And that, singular conversation opened my eyes up for the last 5 years of my coaching career to really start to see and identify where sports have cultivated this whole skill set that I have that maybe made me, successful as a college coach, but really it developed me as a leader. And
Mm-hmm.
so many of those skills that I, was developing through a 15-year coaching career, but even before that as an athlete, being in sports are so transferable. And in my opinion, often you know, the differentiators in the business world, right? Like what I know and
Yeah.
what I am confident in myself in, sitting in front of, a room full of executives and pitching Rematch. Like I've got so much confidence in that space. One, because I believe in what I'm pitching or presenting, but also because I've done this for years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's skills that I've developed, whether again it was as a player or as a coach. So I just think, the gift of sports, I couldn't have more gratitude around what sports has given me, personally and professionally. But, if I'm just looking at this role of being the CEO of a sports tech company, Bill, if we get too detailed into tech, that goes over my head, right? I don't pretend to be someone who knows,
Right. Yeah.
all elements of, the business that I'm leading. But what I do feel really, really confident is being a leader. And
That's right.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to take
And
on, you
getting
know,
people, bring them together as a team and
yeah,
creating
yeah,
something and
yeah,
playing together, so to speak, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that I can imagine you sitting in some of those meetings and think, huh, you guys are pussycats compared to sitting in the arena at TCU and everybody's
Right.
screaming at you or the
Mm-hmm.
opponent's side, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
that's you guys can't. There's nothing you can say that's gonna rattle me, right? Yeah. As
Right.
much as a stadium full of 40,000 fans or whatever it is,
Well, and I think again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like, you know, I have I'm realistic in like, although I think I have a great, conversion rate, if I get a chance to tell you about Rematch, I feel really, really confident that you're going to connect to the value, whatever. But I also understand like I'm not going to win at everything, right? And
Okay.
even in, in a moment where it doesn't lead to a deal or a partnership or whatever, like I promise you every time I step into the arena, I'm gonna get better as a result of it, right?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's
Yeah.
my mindset in the role that I'm at is like anything that I'm doing, like I'm not gonna take for granted the value in this journey. Like I consider myself a very much a visionary leader. I can see the vision crystal clear. Rematch will be the number one sports highlights app in the US market, right? Like there it
Yeah.
is. This whole road to get there, I don't know. Like
Right.
we're figuring it out, but I'm so confident and I'm so motivated by that. Now that's my job as a leader is like to cultivate that vision with my team and ultimately with the partnerships that we create and ultimately the users of our platform is that it truly is the valuable product that I believe and community that I believe Rematch is and will continue to cultivate.
That's awesome. Well, Anna, how can people or where can they find you?
Yeah,
Learn
yeah,
more about
definitely.
Rematch and
Yeah.
you.
So, first of all, the Rematch app is available on, iOS and Google Play Store. So search Rematch Sports Highlights. And again, the app is free to use. All of the features on, the base features of our app are available in its free version. We do have a subscription at $4.99 a month, and that just unlocks, additional features like, you know, 4K video quality and AI audio filter and whatnot. But so download the app, play around with it. Feedback is a big part of our journey right now in making sure that we're, delivering a product that, suits the market. And so, I personally read every, app feedback and email that comes through our contact email form. So please share your feelings, share your experiences. It's important to me. Social media, it's rematch underscore US. We're on every major uh, s- social media platform. We just hit a huge milestone. We just eclipsed 20 million views across our
Wow,
social
congrats.
platforms. And just thank you. And just, over 9 months. So pretty incredible feat for us with still somewhat of a modest following. So do us a favor and follow us when you go to those social handles. And then, of course, our website is rematch.tv. But, it's a product that we really do believe is solving a problem that we didn't even know we had. And I think that's the beauty. And that's when you know that you have found yourself in something special, is when you truly know that it's solving a problem. And I can tell, the listeners, whether it's coaches or parents, like app fatigue is a real thing. And here
Mm.
I am, leading, a company that is app based. So I get it. Like downloading another app. Are you kidding me? Well, I'll tell you what, this is the really easy one. And as soon as you adopt it and you start using it, you're going to see that it's bringing tremendous value that you didn't even know you were missing. The days of pulling out your smartphone and hitting record hoping a moment happens, nothing happens, you end the recording and you do that behavior over and over again, and your camera
Yeah.
roll is full of content that you don't know where that one good video or moment lives,
So
right?
true.
Like rematch completely
Absolutely.
eliminates that experience. So yeah, give it a try. And I really do believe that it's going to be something that, the youth sports community is really going to connect to. And we already have, I mean, 9 months in and we've got 12,000 users on our platform,
It's
right?
awesome.
So,
Yeah.
the early market success is really helped validate, what we're doing.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it and your insight, and best of luck uh,
Oh, thank you so
in your
much, Bill.
journey. And I'm sure we will speak again, and maybe we'll check back in a year from now to see where Rematch is at. And yeah, anyway, I appreciate your time. It's been really
Yeah,
insightful, and you have an amazing background. And I'm hopeful and excited that our listeners, are tuning in and pulled something out. And there's a lot of
yeah.
nuggets in here. Can't wait to listen back and digest and soak it all in. So again, thank you so much, Hannah. We appreciate you and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. Anytime I get to, get back in a bit of the basketball coach seat, it's fun for me. So this was a real
Awesome.
pleasure. Thank you so much for the platform that, you've created here and the way that you're supporting youth basketball.
Awesome. Coaches, till next time. And you can find us on all socials. And if this is your first time listening, check us out on any platform. Instagram, it's all under Coaching Youth Hoops. YouTube, uh, where else? Facebook. We got a bunch of Facebook groups. But go to coachingyouthhoops.com for more information. Thank you.